And I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. Happy to be here with you again on this Sunday live stream. For those who are seeing this for the first time, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream speaking with you, the public, about all the issues that matter to you. The show in general is always a long-form political commentary. It is free-form. There is no script. We speak from the heart with you about the issues that matter, and we provide you the sources. So we're going to be talking about a lot of things today. And I'm happy to see some people are already on with us. And no doubt, please keep in mind, if you're watching on Twitter, if you are watching on Facebook, we inevitably will get shadow banned. We will see some delays in our conversation, and we advise you go over to YouTube under No Soundbites Allowed. You'll see our live stream there. Usually that's the best of the three on this. But no matter what, keep up with us. We're going to keep going no matter what. They can't shut us down. It's called the First Amendment for a reason. That being said, let's talk about, we have a couple of things that are happening today. We do have a guest that we expect to have on the show at approximately 2:45. They'll be calling in. They've been in the New York Times. They've been on national news media. It is relevant to what's going on right now throughout the nation. And we're going to be talking with them live to get their take on these elections, on what's happening to us in America. So I do hope you look forward to that. And that's, as I said, in about 15 minutes. Now, separate of that, and of course, you can always leave your comments here, either on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and we will see that. We will respond. You can also call in at 607-242-1582 so that we can see your live comments. I should also mention that on Wednesday, we're going to be speaking with Mark Meckler about the Constitutional Convention and what we can see in 2021 and how much a need there is for that. But what about today? What about what's just happened? Matter of fact, just before coming on to the show today, we had some news that just broke out, and it was somewhat shocking to me. You may not have noticed it. It was reported by the BBC, and it's amazing, or excuse me, in this case, The Guardian. It's amazing how much news is being covered overseas about our election and what it means to the rest of the world and how they're perceiving it. It's really different than what you hear in American media. And the thing that gets me is we saw that the lieutenant governor of Georgia is now basically insulting President Trump. He's rejecting the bid by President Trump to win the election. And the thing that really got me about that, skip everything else. There's just one thing that he said. This is Lieutenant Governor Duncan. And he says he's already given up the ghost. He says on January 20th, Joe Biden's going to be sworn in as the 46th president. He hasn't gotten he doesn't have president-elect status. The votes have not been done by the Electoral College. He goes on to say, and the Constitution is still in place. Theoretically, yes. This is still America. As a lieutenant governor and as a Georgian, I'm proud that we were able to look up after 3 recounts and be able to see that this election was fair. There's the part that gets me. This election was fair in Georgia, in Fulton County. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? After the video evidence we saw this week, he would dare say that this was a fair election? And I don't care if he's a Republican or a Democrat. It doesn't really matter. He's saying that this was a fair election. Did he not see the video? It's evidence right in front of him of impropriety and what seems to be fraud. And we're going to get into that in the show today. We're really going to address this. Also, one of the other Republicans, I believe in the state Senate for Georgia, mentions we don't see anything that would overturn the will of the people in Georgia. Are you kidding me? Are you out of your mind? We've already seen that there are irregularities in Georgia. We've already seen 5,500 votes that were mysteriously not counted and didn't show up until we saw President Trump go out and argue and say there's irregularities, do a recount, something is wrong. And that was the only reason why we saw that he got another 5,000 votes, that there were problems in this election, a lot of them. And Fulton County is the example, and it's very important because somewhere between 18 and 24,000 votes may have been fraudulently or in error or with an irregularity. Doesn't matter how you want to describe it. There's a problem with more than enough votes to change the election. There's 12,000 votes between President Trump and Joe Biden in Georgia. What happened in Fulton County alone accounts for somewhere between 18 to 24,000 votes. And at the end of the day, whether Joe Biden wins or President Trump wins, the American people need to know what happened. Because how can we have confidence in our government if we don't? And I'm amazed that Republicans are giving up the ghost and saying, well, let it go. It's over. Without saying, here's the honest truth. Here's the reality that happened. I don't know. Maybe it's me, but we're going to talk about this. We're going to go through this because this is a conversation with you and me, and I'm going to provide some sources on what I'm thinking, where my conclusions are coming from, but I'm willing and happy to hear your thoughts as well. And it seems like talking about the fact that there were fraud and irregularities in Georgia proven by video was all it took for Facebook and possibly Twitter to start having their issues again, which is kind of funny because our system is blasting this out with about 2 to 3 times as much power as needed to make sure that you have a clear, smooth stream. So much for freedom of speech on the internet. So much for them being just platforms and not publishers and not censoring people that they don't like. But this is something we've been going through for weeks now because of the election as we talk about the election. Don't worry, we're not going anywhere. And your comments, please, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, we're happy to hear it. If you disagree, we're happy to hear your thoughts. Tell us why. Tell us why you think we may be wrong. But let me get into one of the things that we're going to be talking about here before our guest comes on in about 7 minutes. And that's going to be, excuse me, I'm just double checking, making sure our guest is going to be on. It looks like everything's going to be on time. So we're fine there. So I apologize. You know, when we listen to everyone saying, well, Joe Biden's won, it's all over, let's remember something that's very important and something that's critical. This is hurting America. It's hurting America because we don't know who is the president-elect. And we don't have faith in there. If you remember, before the election, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer got together and they were adamant that they were not going to put forward an economic stimulus to help the American public, to help small business owners before the election, because they did not want to give President Trump a win that could possibly alter the election. They wanted to make sure Biden's name was on any recovery that were to go forth because they wanted him to win. It's the same thing that we saw with Governor Cuomo, Governor Newsom, Nancy Pelosi, and the others about the vaccine. We heard them say all throughout the end of October and beginning of November, we don't trust a vaccine that comes from President Trump or during the Trump administration. They outright told America that it was a lie. How many months did they tell us that it was a lie that there could possibly even be a vaccine before the end of the year? That's what they told us. And they guaranteed that if it did come out, they weren't going to use it, that they wouldn't use a vaccine that came from President Trump because Orange Man bad. And that's also why they've held back economic recovery for small businesses and for individuals who can't go to work because there is no work to go to. The jobs don't exist. And they've been holding that back. And we know that it's been having a pretty big impact because here's locally in Broome County, New York, the bluest of blue states, a state that loves to give away money. That's why we're $61 billion in debt, why we've had over 13, possibly $15 billion in debt just in 2020 alone, because our economic policy advisor, the ever so brilliant Emperor Cuomo, with his single party rule and his absolute executive power overreach, has decided that he's just giving money away to everyone, usually, but he's also destroying small businesses. And right now, small businesses need the stimulus. They are failing, and we know this. We know that in New Jersey, 30% of businesses failed forever. And we know that if they have another round of COVID lockdowns, up to 40% of small businesses in New Jersey are expected to completely fail. We're looking at New York State, somewhere between 40 to 60% of small businesses that made it through the first round are going to fail, with over 20% already gone. We know that in Colorado, it's estimated that it could be as high as 80% of the small businesses could fail in another lockdown. We know that lockdowns are going on right now in Southern California, as 33 million people are being told stay in their homes. And we can see that in looking at in Binghamton and in the southern tier, Broome County, the businesses need this help. But Nancy Pelosi is not willing to give it to anyone. Nancy Pelosi is waiting. She wants to make sure that only Joe Biden gets credit. And she wants to make sure that her House has as many Democrats as possible. Now, if the blue wave had actually happened, like we were told by the news media, like we were told by the Democrats, like we were told by the polls, that if they happened, we would see a blue wave. And they were more than ready to go forward with every economic plan. The stimulus was ready to go forward. Saving small businesses, they were going to do it once they knew they had Congress in hand and they had the presidency. And that's why they made sure to spend out of their minds. It was incredible. In the New York 22nd race, one of the most contested races in the nation, it's a race that is separated by 12 votes at this moment. I'm going to get into this in a second. They spent over $17 million. Democrats spent over $17 million to try and make sure that Anthony Brindisi would win in the bluest state in, well, the second bluest state in the country, just behind California. And this is with an incumbent. $17 million. They were spending money on ads from as far back as, according to Google and Open Secrets, as far back as June of 2018, they started spending money on this race. They wanted to win as bad as they possibly could. But this race has been a complete fiasco. We've seen everything in this race. We've seen the dead have been voting. We've seen that ballots were lost and then they were found. We've seen that Anthony Brindisi was given votes that weren't his, that had to be given back to Claudia Tenney, kind of like what we saw out in Wisconsin, Michigan. It's insane. We have every problem that we knew was going to happen because of the way that Governor Cuomo and many other governors throughout the nation, the way they changed the votes and what is a valid vote, the mail-in ballots. When they changed all of that, we knew there was going to be fraud. We knew there were going to be errors, and they went and did it anyway. And it's insane what happened in the New York 22nd. I mean, this is from the New York Times itself. 12 votes separated these House candidates. Then 55 ballots were found. Then they suddenly magically found, and of those, 20% were illegal votes. They were from unregistered voters, people who could not vote. And they showed up in person and they thought that they could vote just because they wanted to vote. I have to wonder. Now, there's something that you notice that's happening here. In all of these irregularities, almost every single case, all of the problems seem to always come to benefit the Democratic Party. When the votes were taken from Claudia Tenney, they were given to Anthony Brindisi. He's the Democrat. Same thing that we saw with votes being taken away from President Trump and given to Joe Biden. We've seen that there have been miscounts. We've seen that there are ballots that have been mixed in so that you can't separate them, take them out because they shouldn't have been counted in the first place. And this is all because of one simple thing. And I'm quoting the New York Times here, the fate of the race is of utmost importance to House Democrats, who are holding on to a slim majority after a disconcerting election cycle in which 12 Democratic incumbents have suffered defeat. Hang on. Good afternoon. Thank you for calling No Soundbites. Hello. Hey, hello. Everybody. We have with us our special guest today, and that is Claudia Tenney. And how are you, Claudia?
Good afternoon. Everything's going well.
Great. I wanted to have you on, and I really appreciate that you are taking some time out. I know it's Hell Week in Congress with everything that's going on. Even in a normal circumstance, you'd be going through trying to get ready to be sworn back in as a congresswoman again. But this month has been insane, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, it's been a little crazy. Obviously, we're hoping that our lead on election night of over 28,400 votes would be sufficient. We were anticipating a lot of absentees, but we didn't think it would end up this close in the end. And although it's kind of a funny number, we're technically, it looks like we're up 12, but there's a lot of ifs in there. The judge is considering candidate challenges and also considering, which are all included in the counts, by the way. So the judge used an unusual standard, the O'Keefe case, which allows when you make an objection to the canvass during an absentee count, if there's an objection, instead of setting that objection aside and that ballot aside, the judge had the boards of election make a photocopy and put the sticky note or indicate the objection and put it back in an envelope for later review by the judge, take the actual original ballot and put it in the machine and count it. And then he's going to go back later and review those ballots and determine if the challenges are, grant the challenges or not. And then those challenges would come out or stay in, depending on where the judge rules. About 400 of those are contained in the final number right now. And the judge has, in the numbers that actually are counted, and the judge is going to determine on tomorrow, there's an oral argument at 1:00 in Supreme Court in Oswego County to consider where the judge will go on those ballots and a couple of other issues. So the good thing is most of those challenges are coming from our side, over 400. So we'll see where the judge rules on that.
Now that's separate of the problems with the Oneida board elections and their ballots that were missing sticky notes, and that's separate of the issues with Shenango County, where they found 55 votes, 11 of which were for unregistered people.
Right. Well, it's 12 of those actually now. So
12. Okay.
So when it comes to some of the challenges made by the Brindisi camp, they have to deal with what are known as provisional affidavit ballots. Mm-hmm. So those ballots are created when somebody shows up at the Board of Elections, either by early vote or on election day. And for some reason, the Board of Elections does not have a record of their registration, meaning they're not in the book. When people either sign this year, or there was a tablet, or you sign an actual physical book to indicate that you're voting, they didn't have their name on it. So what the board does is accommodates that voter by having them fill out a ballot. They take the ballot and they put it in an envelope and they attach an affidavit to it. And in that affidavit, the person indicates their name, their address, if they've changed addresses, where they vote, their date of birth, that type of information. So once election day is over, all of those ballots, those affidavit ballots, which are envelopes with an affidavit attached to them, get sent to the Board of Elections, and they're considered by both the Republican and the Democrat commissioner. So they spend time with each of their staff and they go through them one by one and determine whether this person is a registered voter, or for whatever reason, they are supposed to back up the information because they were not on the ballot, and they make a decision about keeping them in the canvass or setting them aside. So what is an issue now are the ones that were set aside by the boards of election. And those are the ballots that the Brindisi camp is interested in bringing back in, where they claim there was an objection, although there's nothing in the evidence to reflect that. But the only ballots that they really want to bring in are just Democrats from certain regions, which we argue, in the event that the judge gets to this point, that's actually an equal protection issue that was raised in the famous case of Bush v. Gore in 2000, where each voter in each ballot has to be treated the same, regardless of their party and regardless of what region they're from. So our argument would be that all of the valid votes should come in if we're going to get to that point. So we'll see if we get to that. The judge, we've asked for a certification right now, and just because, we want to get this thing over with, because we don't want the worst case scenario to happen, which could happen, which is under the Elections Act, the Federal Contested Elections Act, the House administration under Nancy Pelosi, now her leadership, can actually choose to seat a candidate even over a Democrat, for example, even though the Republican has been certified by the boards of election in the state and also has won the race. And that happened in 1985. So the reason we're concerned about this right now is because in a very close race in the Iowa 2nd District, the member-elect Marionette Miller Meeks right now won by 6 votes. The state of Iowa, their bipartisan Board of Elections, certified her with a 5-0 vote as the winner and the member-elect. However, her opponent, instead of choosing another legal channel, and by the way, she's been through 2 recounts, I believe, already, chose to go to the House administration. So she's seeking to reinstate or reuse that law that has not been used since 1985.
See, that scares me because Nancy Pelosi, as seen on C-SPAN, and we have the audio clip of her speaking about this, seems to imply that she is willing to use that same rule, not only in Iowa, but possibly also for the New York 22nd race, which seems that in both cases, they are completely nullifying the public and the vote. And it takes away all trust in votes and in elections when they do something like this.
Yeah, it's quite hypocritical when you consider what they are doing to the president now, publicly attacking him for checking and making sure that we followed through on the regular voting system, the potential for fraud, abuse that may have been going on, and having, the president has a right, as all people that are running for office, to challenge these boards and go through the legal process. And this year was an unusual year in New York, especially because the governor changed the rules in August with an executive order. And he changed New York election law to look very much like what the Democrats passed on the floor as their signature legislation, which is known as H.R. 1, the For the People Act. I call it the For the Democrats Only Act, which would be an overhaul of our election system, banning voter ID, which many states have, undermining the integrity of each vote, allowing 16-year-olds to register early, allow this app, exactly what we're seeing today, this online request for absentee ballots that is not verified. A host of other really dangerous types of provisions are in H.R. 1, which basically, was passed by the House of Representatives. Congressman Brindisi voted for it. very partisan vote. I don't believe any Republicans voted for it.
No.
But it would really ensure that we never get a Republican elected at a federal level, and probably in most races again, unless it's a real slam dunk region. So, but it totally undermines the vote. But back to Cuomo, many of those provisions, including the unsecured online ballot request portal that Cuomo created, is problematic. I mean, I could call up and, all I need is a date of birth and an address and a name, and I can order ballots for people that aren't requested. And numerous people have told us they received ballots that they didn't request. And we just don't know how many there are out there. But, there is a lot of room for potential tampering and fraud with ballots on that. And, and
I
subversive behavior.
Yeah, I heard there was a 96-year-old woman who had never requested a ballot, and someone actually put in a ballot. They actually voted for her in her name, and she did not approve that. She did not want that to happen. So,
well, they voted in person.
Yeah, they walked in as
it
her.
wasn't an absentee ballot, but somebody went and portrayed themselves as this woman, and she said she's not ambulatory and certainly was not able to get to the polls. So interesting.
It's identity fraud right there. So, I mean, let me ask, because I don't think anyone's asked you this. When you hear people who have said, this has been the most secure election ever, as was said by, I believe it was Secretary of State of Pennsylvania. And you hear other Democrats say, this has been absolutely secure. There has been no election fraud whatsoever. No irregularities have occurred. Does that make you feel confident?
Oh, no. I mean, there are irregularities that have been occurring for a long time, especially in New York, where we don't have a valid ID system, and we also don't have, a real known ability, an ability to know who the elected or who the registered voters actually are. We also have this bizarre system where, we have 11 colleges, for example, in New York's 22nd district.
Mm-hmm.
So students can register to vote in their college using their postal box or whatever, their mailbox at the school, and their dorm room as their registration, but they can also go home, and if they're not residents of the district of the school, and they can go home and vote there as well. But there's no national registry or way for these boards to cross-check this. They're completely overwhelmed. There's no resources by the state. And now when you get a close election like this, you realize just how dangerous this can be and how the integrity of someone's vote is undermined by a system that has an administrative nightmare for the boards. It's very difficult. A lot of people want to go after these boards of elections, but they're doing the best they can with this really unusual, unprecedented onslaught of absentees and people showing up, of course, in a presidential year where they normally handle anywhere from 7,000 to 10,000 absentees at the most to handling over 70,000 with the same time deadlines. So it's just been very confusing. The databases are not secure. Many people showed up to vote. As I indicated, these affidavit ballots, we found probably over 600 or 700 people that probably should have been able to vote based on our cross-checking and our time that we spent, matching them up with the state board's records. And so those were missed by the county boards. And that's a problem, where people that are being denied the right to vote and other people are having other people vote in their place. So this is really important. And my race is so close that it really just underscores how important it is. And we've got to fix this, or people are never going to have any faith in our election system again. And nor should they right now, because this just shouldn't be happening.
I agree. Let me ask you another question that no one's asked. And I think it's very important, especially with the environment that we have right now. And I know I don't have you for a lot longer, so I do appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. If you, as we expect, if you hold the line and you win this race, whether it's by one vote, whether it's by 12, whether it's by 5,000, it doesn't matter. If you win, and let's say for whatever reason President Trump may not, is that going to change the fact that you are going to stand up for the American people, the constituents in New York 22nd? Is it going to have any effect on you, or are you there for the people?
Oh, not at all. I mean, I've been asked this question about whether, if I would serve under a President Biden administration. Of course. I mean, I'm going to advocate just as strong and as much as I possibly can. Probably, even it's going to be a little more challenging with the Biden administration potentially. But, I represent this district. I live across the street from the house I grew up in. I want to see our region come back. I think we've been doing well. We're doing better than we have. Right now, New York is in a very, very tough position. The COVID virus has really put us in a bad spot. These shutdowns and actually, unfortunately, right now we're seeing actually an increase in contraction rate. More and more people are getting this virus, so it's not going away anytime soon. We need common sense policies to keep people who are vulnerable safe and do it, the things that are common sense. But we also have to be careful not to shut down the entire economy, and especially New York, where New York City drives a lot of our economic wealth, and we're seeing terrible numbers coming out of New York. The New York State Comptroller is going to be coming out with numbers soon that are not going to be good as we head into the budgetary process in New York State. So we've got to fight as hard as we can on the federal level to get the resources we need after this just devastating year that we've experienced. And also, if you take it in the long term, our region has suffered so much over the years of being co-opted by losing jobs to China and Asia, and the NAFTA. A lot of the things that President Trump ran on were things that I ran on when I first ran for the assembly over 10 years ago. And it's just really, really important that we continue to advocate. I'm a small business owner. I also have, a son who's serving in the Marine Corps. What's happening in the country and what's happening internationally. I mean, this country has got to be a leader, and our region was always a leader. We were the beginning of the Industrial Revolution was started here. Especially look at the Southern Tier. I mean, people always understand and know what Binghamton is. When you say Binghamton, IBM, Endicott Johnson, famous crossroads in a wonderful spot of the beautiful area of New York. But we need to come back. We need to fight to make sure we get the resources. It might be a little more challenging, but God willing, if I can get in the seat again, I'm going to work just as hard or even harder to make sure that our region comes back. I have a stake in it. Obviously, I have a business here. It's in Shenango County. It was started in 1946, and we're still going, and we don't want to close, nor do we want to move. We want to make sure that everyone here has a chance for the opportunity for prosperity. And we've got to fight the socialism that has just taken over our state and is out there on the national level. And I don't know. I worry that Joe Biden does not have the strength to stand up to some of these people who are really, they've got their back foot in the door. So
he's already been saying
a lot of work to do.
Yeah, he's already been saying that he may just, claim a disease and resign to give it to Kamala. So that scares me. But I want to I know I've heard your phone just going off. I want to thank you for taking some time. You're a personal friend of mine as well, so I appreciate it as a person and and also as the show.
It's all a mystery to me.
So
yes. Thank you. Thank you also for putting your hat in the ring and getting out there and fighting the fight. It's not easy to run for office, but we need more and more people who are willing to do that. And we need to support everyone, whether they win or lose, that's willing to stand for the Republican banner and stand for our true values. And we appreciate you doing that, and also your service in the Marines and all that you've done to really just stand out and be a voice in our community.
Well, thank you for that, Claudia. I really do appreciate it. Let me let you go. I know you're busy.
Thanks so much.
And we'll talk again soon, okay?
Enjoys as much Christmas as they can as we have our first COVID Christmas.
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Claudia.
Thanks so much. All right, bye-bye.
So that was Claudia Tenney on our program. She is a friend of the show. She is a personal friend of myself as well. I've known her about 9 years now. She's been on with us before doing exclusive interviews, and we had an opportunity here again to do that. So I wanted to make sure you had an understanding of exactly the context of what we're looking at here. We keep hearing from people that there are no irregularities, that there is no hint of fraud. And I can understand why Tina is saying it's stuff like this that will make me never vote again. Our votes have less than zero value due to the lefty fraud and abuse. And I have to say, it is abuse we keep seeing only from the left. There has been, as far as I'm aware, Not one case, not one suggestion of this kind of any of these irregularities, these errors, these problems that are going from the left to the right. You have yet to hear of a single ballot that was miscounted for President Trump that belonged to Joe Biden. You have yet to see anyone run through ballots 2-3 times for President Trump instead of Joe Biden. You haven't heard about the dead people who were registered and actually voted that voted for voted for President Trump against Joe Biden. You haven't heard that yet. You haven't heard of a 96-year-old that had someone impersonate them, go down and vote for Joe Biden and Anthony Brindisi. You haven't heard that happen on the Republican side ever, anywhere in the nation. What is it? 160 million people voted, and not one time can we find a single case that I am aware of, because the news media would be happy to put it out there and show that, oh, the Republicans did it too. These errors happen on the Republican side as well as the Democratic, which means these aren't these aren't errors and irregularities. Statistically, if this was just mistakes, they'd be happening on both sides, and they're not. And that says a lot. And I believe that we saw voter apathy before that led to about 4 out of 10 people voting in every election, whether it's a midterm, any of the non-election years. And I believe that, just like Tina mentioned, we may see votes coming up in 2021, 22, 23, any non-election year. We may see the lowest number of individuals going out and voting again ever, which is devastating. And please go out and vote, whether it's in Georgia or anywhere else. Go and vote. Your vote is more important now than ever before. In Iowa, the election, the congressional election, is based on 6 votes. In New York, 22nd, it's 12 votes. Your vote does matter. It is essential that you go out and vote. Not to mention all of the lower level races that happen at the state level and at the county level and at the city level. It is important. Don't let this frustrate you and stop you. What we need to do is make sure that we're not seeing this kind of fraud. And I am calling it fraud. We have another call coming in. Hello, this is No Soundbites Allowed. I'm your host, Michael Voss. Who's speaking? Can you hear me all right? Oh, hang on. Stay on with us. Stay on. Can we hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Just had to switch systems because I had the guest call in on a different phone. Who's this?
Jason from Bangton.
Hey, Jason. It's been a little while since we've heard from you. How are you doing?
I've just been, hectic, but
I understand that.
I wanted to, mention a few things. You had, Tenney on there, and it's this race is I've been really racking my brain about, and just looking at the inconsistencies. Now, I know before I kind of, messaged you, about just some of the numbers and, just trying to understand exactly, what it means, what they mean. And what I did is that for the House, the Tenney and Brindisi race, I pretty much went through and just looked at Broome County alone and just isolated those specific numbers and to see how they ended up falling out. And I just found a few trends that I just really just didn't make much, sense to me. Is one of the things is that I noticed that, Tenney ended up with, I believe, like about 6,000 less votes than Trump did. And Brindisi also ended up with about 4,000 more votes than Biden did.
Which is the funny part.
Huh?
That's the funny part. He had more votes than Biden did.
Yeah, it blew my mind. And, then I also went in and I was trying to figure out where the numbers came from. And, you look, you say, like when it comes to, Tenney not getting as much votes, you figure, okay, if people are voting down the line, maybe they just all came out for Trump, right? and it would have subtracted. So for example, is that there was about 2,000 people that voted for the president that didn't vote down ballot in for the House at all. And so if you just subtract that from Tenney's totals, that would explain that would subtract about 6,000 votes. And then so it would mean that 4,000 votes that went for Trump would have had to go to Brindisi for him to get ahead of Biden the way that he did. And if you're telling me that somehow happened where 4,000 people decided to vote for Brindisi after he impeached him, I mean, it just doesn't make any logical sense. And there was one other thing that I looked up later, and I was trying to figure out exactly the total number of people who actually voted for the versus registered voters. And I checked the totals for, I think it was in the beginning of February in Broome County, how many registered voters there were versus the total.
Yep.
And now, if you go for all registered voters, active and inactive, there was a total rate of about 70%. But if you just go by the active voters, then it's 80%. That means that 80% of all active voters actually voted in this election. And the only other place where that has been that high has been, I believe it was Minnesota. And so,
where we have
like
problems
I said,
there
I
too.
look at these numbers, I can't put it together.
I understand. And everyone has these issues. In fact, I was going to talk about it a little bit later in the show, but there's also what's been going on in Fulton County, which I think is absolutely insane, because we have evidence there in Fulton County where we saw not only were people counting votes after everyone had been sent away. We have video of this. It's not even a question. It's not a hint. It's not a maybe. Everyone was sent away. A handful of people were left. They stayed. They started counting ballots for 2 hours with no supervision, no one there. And there is, in that video, if you look carefully, there is one woman who counts the ballots 3 times over, the same stack, 3 times through. And it's on the video that we've seen so far, which makes you wonder what's going on with these votes, what's real. What is truly the honest count, Yeah,
I 100% agree. I think one of the most frustrating things right now watching this happening is just the simple lack of curiosity from any sort of journalist, to a major degree from the what you call the legacy media.
Well,
I mean, there's no curiosity of what's going on or them trying to run down these people and interview them to actually get their story. You just don't
worse.
hear it. And
It's
drives you nuts.
It's actually worse than you think. Well, there's 2 things going on. One, there's voter fatigue right now because we've been going at this full board for for a month now, and people still don't have answers. So it's driving people nuts. And that's pushing people away. But you also have the news media has been silencing everything. Right this second, we have Facebook and I believe Twitter are trying to block or shadow ban this conversation right now. We've said the critical words. We've said election errors and irregularities. That's all it takes. And while my signal is going out at about 2 to 3 times what's needed to reach the public, they've dropped it. They don't want the public to hear about this. So you have news media that don't want to talk about this. You have internet that's locking people out and blocking them from speaking about this. And remember, these are the same 2 groups, the news media and the internet overlords, that were responsible. They were cheerleading Biden before this ever came about. They were pushing this. So it's not a surprise they don't want you to have this conversation. That's why you're not hearing about it. They didn't want to talk about anything but they promised you that this would be the most secure election ever, and they don't want to change that story. They promised you that the poll said this was going to be a blue wave. So how can we be surprised now when they say, what do you mean there's a video that shows someone counting the same votes 3 times in a row with no one there to supervise it? That's not real. And they just walk away, and they're walking away from it, and they're counting on people being too tired to pay attention.
I agree. I mean, it just, like I said, it just blows your mind, on so many different levels, especially with, certain Republicans, simply, stating the fact there is actual no fraud. And, the thing is that to prove that these individuals did it with intent, rather than saying that they made a mistake, it's like there's just too many inconsistencies to say it, especially like with things with the stupid the USB drives or whatever. It's like, voila, all of a sudden they appear out of nowhere. Or, here we got votes, flipped here and there, and it's like, it's just you can't tell me that those inconsistencies aren't intentional, especially when they're happening all over the place.
Well, it's not. You can't call them. I don't even know how you can say it's an inconsistency when we have voting machines that we knew in January, according to ABC News, as I published it in a video earlier this week. ABC's news on January 2020 said the Dominion voting systems are connected to the internet and therefore they can be hacked. We knew this was a problem in January. And here we go in November, the election happens and we find out there was an Ethernet connection to the internet on these voting systems. We know that their software wasn't working properly. And yet there's not a national call to say, let's audit every single one of the Dominion voting systems. 52 of the counties in New York State use that system. How many of them had that same error? No one knows because they won't check. We don't know about the other 27 states either. But yet it may well be a problem that was identified by the news media in January that they don't want to talk about today. That's part of the problem. That's why no one trusts this anymore. It's really sad. It's aggravating. And I know people don't want to talk about it, but a lot of people do. Because this is bigger than just whether President Trump won or lost. It's about whether or not we have a free election in America, the nation that's supposed to be the most free in the world. I mean, that's my concern about it. Is that your concern?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, other thing that drives me nuts, you're talking about like the software. One of the things that was going around when the software engineers were getting word of how the election software was written and there was no check, system on this, they're just like, that's impossible. The only reason you write software like that is because you do not want people to look over your work in the end or to see whether or not there is fraud. So these systems and all these voting systems, it appears to be that there's holes in these systems that are left there with the full intent that they can be abused by somebody in the future. And the fact that nobody wanted to lock these systems down, or there hasn't been I can't get it. It's just like if you had a bank, an online banking system, and you will let that, be programmed like this. I mean, the bank would be bankrupt in a second. It's just nuts.
It is nuts. And we knew about this. There was CNN covered it, and I did cover it earlier this week. CNN covered, they had a hacking expo, a group of hackers who come together to test election systems, and they were showing us in 2019 all of the errors with our voting systems and how easy they were to break into. In fact, one woman broke into one of the election tally machines with no tools whatsoever in 5 minutes and was able to manipulate the election, the votes on that machine any way she wanted. It's insane. We knew this is a problem, and we didn't, or at least the news media didn't care. It would seem many of the election boards across the country didn't care. And we know that the internet does not want us to talk about this. And I think it's very vitally important. When I speak to people in in Peru, in Germany, in Britain, who watch this show, they really care whether or not America is free, because it affects them too. So it's not just Americans being secure, it's the rest of the world being secure in democracy. It's a much bigger issue than people think it is.
Yeah. The one thing I was going to say too about this was, when it comes, we do have a constitution that allows this system, to, fix things, in case they don't have enough electoral votes, to make it. But the thing is, I realize is that I think that politically, I don't even know if I would like. I can't really say whether a person's a coward or not, but I think what it is that they know that if this is, turned in Trump's favor, there's going to be rioting. And the thing is that the question is that who wants to be blamed for that? And I think that pressure right there, if anything, is what's silencing a lot of individuals.
It shouldn't be, because regardless of what the vote count is, just like I mentioned before the election, we have seen, and it is a fact, rioting is going on right now. Regardless of who wins, we've heard Antifa say that they want Joe Biden to bend over and do what they say, or they will continue to riot, and they are, and they have been. In fact, in Seattle, the governor, who would not say anything when Trump was guaranteed to be president, they let the protesters run amok, and now they're calling out the National Guard to try and stop them. The very thing that she complained about when President Trump did it. They're going to continue to go forward. The only reason why we stopped hearing about BLM, why we stopped hearing about Antifa, why we stopped hearing about the riots, is they're no longer useful. That's honestly the answer. It's the same reason why we are suddenly seeing a transition now that Dr. Fauci is going to work with Biden. Suddenly the vaccine that was the orange man bad Trump vaccine, well, that you couldn't use. But now that it may be the Biden vaccine, well, now it's good. And now they're backtracking and flip-flopping over everything they said. That's terrifying. It tells you how far and how insidious this whole thing was. Go ahead.
No, I say it's absolutely, horrific. And I think that you definitely see at this point that a lot of people have completely given up faith with the narratives that are coming out, because the hypocrisy and the inconsistency with our elected officials is just so blatant. When you see nearly every single blue state or blue city official go out and put a mandate out and do exactly the opposite, literally like the day after, you're just like looking at them, and then all of a sudden they turn around and they find you, they shut you down. You're like, you got to be kidding me.
No, I understand. We got to watch the language, though.
What did I say?
And it sounded like you said something a little naughty in there. But I want to make sure other people have a chance to give a call, and there's a bunch more in the show. I always appreciate it when you call in, Jason, and I thank you. And of course, I'm looking for your comments as well. And let me know if we're continuing to see Facebook, Twitter mess with the stream, because it looks like they are. All right?
All right, will do.
All right.
Yeah, bye.
And yes, folks, as you can see from our guest who called in, Claudia Tenney, talking about the New York 22nd race, which is the second most competitive race in the nation, down to 12 votes, with 55 votes magically appearing, including another 20% of those votes being by unregistered voters. She can call in. You can call in, just like Jason just called in. You can leave comments just like Tina did on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and let us know what you think. And even though we're seeing that those systems are trying to block us from being able to speak freely, I'm here listening to you, and you can still call in. You can still send your text. We are paying attention, because we're not going to let our voice be silenced. Now, I was going to get to this a little bit later in the program, but I'll do it right now just because we've been talking about it. One of the things that's really amazing, and I do want to get into Biden, and I will be speaking about Biden and what his administration may mean to America, both in terms of COVID, the economy, whether or not it's actually going to be Kamala Harris. We're going to talk about that in a second based on what came out today. But as I was just mentioning to Jason, as was mentioned with Claudia Tenney, there is evidence there's absolutely clear and unequivocal evidence that there was a problem in the voting that took place in Michigan, in Pennsylvania. Georgia. It's been a long day. In Georgia, the voting there, where we saw that, and this is the videotape that was brought in as evidence. It's undoctored. It is the actual evidence. This is just a short clip of that. As always, the links will be contained in the description on YouTube. But if you look at this, which I'm at it looks like 23 minutes and 7 seconds into this video. And if you look at this, you'll see that this is the room, the election room in Fulton County, Georgia. Everyone has been sent home, which is at about 11 o'clock at night. Everyone was sent home because they were told that they were going to stop counting, except for these individuals. The woman in purple here is the mother of the woman who will be over here. That will be her daughter. And what you see and what I have queued up here should be...
I can show it to you. There you go. So now they're going to start pulling these ballots out from under this table. This table, the black one, was placed there by the lady with the blonde braids at about 8:22 a.m. in the morning. So she put that table there. So the same person who's staying behind now, the same person who cleared the place out under the pretense that we're going to stop counting, is the person who put the table there.
Keep an eye on this woman in purple right here. I want you to watch that desk, because that desk, when you watch the video, as identified here by Rick Ray, this woman counts 3 times the same stack. Okay? I want to be very clear here. They count the same stack of votes 3 times over. Again, without anyone being there, without any supervision. And this is what was claimed by individuals throughout the news media as evidence that there are no irregularities, there's no fraud, there's no question. This is the most secure election that has ever happened, ever. And again, I'm going to come back to the video so you can continue to hear them speak about this.
At 8:22 in the morning. Yeah, I saw 4 suitcases come out from underneath the table. Yeah, upper right hand, you see the gentleman in the red. So he just pulled one out. So what are these ballots doing there, separate from all the other ballots? And why are they only counting them whenever the place is cleared out with no witnesses?
Mom and daughter.
Question.
Mom and daughter right there as they're going through the same ballots
these machines
over and over again.
Can process about 3,000 ballots an hour. You have multiple machines there, and they're there for 2 hours. So you do the math. How many ballots went through those machines in those 2 hours when there was no one there to supervise, to be present, consistent with your statute and rules, to supervise the tabulation? We believe that could easily be, and probably is certainly, beyond the margin of victory in this.
That would be 18 to 24,000 potential votes. With this woman here running them through 3 times. 3 times. That's a problem. The integrity of our elections are at risk here. And it's a big deal. We've already heard one individual, and I'm sure there are millions others, who are saying, why am I voting then? If it doesn't matter, if someone can count the same vote 3 times over, if like with Claudia Tenney, as she was speaking with us, someone can impersonate you and go in and vote in your name, if someone can magically find 5,500 ballots suddenly after all counting is supposed to be done, if they can go out there and they can send in ballots by the truckload. Why are you voting? And the thing is, your vote absolutely matters. What's important is we have to stop all of this kind of fraud that's going on. And you cannot look at this. When I listen to the Pennsylvania and Michigan Republicans that are saying, it's all over, we shouldn't even investigate this. How can you say that and look at this video when you can listen to the sworn testimony of individuals across America, and they are saying, individuals who have sworn an affidavit, penalty of perjury, going to jail, and they're saying that we saw fraud going on. How can you not investigate that and say that we have a legitimate government? And if America can't have a legitimate government, then how does Peru, who's copying the American system, how do they have a legitimate government? How can we go over to anywhere in Africa and tell them they have bad elections if we can't have a good one ourselves? How do we tell people in the Middle East that they have unfair elections and that there's election fraud? How can we blame North Korea, China, Russia about their elections and that they are disenfranchising their public if we can't admit we're seeing the same thing happen here? If the champion of democracy in the world can't admit there is a problem and try to fix it and be very public and transparent about it, how do we expect anyone else in the world is going to do it? If we won't do it and we're the shining beacon of democracy in the world, how do we expect anyone else to do it? That's the problem. That's the big problem. And by the way, folks, you can call in 607-242-1582. If you think I'm wrong, if you think I'm right, you can call in just like Jason has, just like Claudia Tenney did, to say why you think I'm wrong, why you think it doesn't matter. Why is it that when we see a group of people who have been isolated for hours on end, processing enough votes to change an election by themselves without notifying anybody, if you think that's okay, if you think that's above board, if you think that's not an irregularity, that's not a concern, please explain to me why. If you see this woman run the ballots through 3 times in a row and you're not concerned about that, you don't think that's unusual, you don't think that's potentially fraud, please explain to me how it is not. I mean, could there be a problem with the system? Could there be an error there? Maybe, but how would you know? No one else is there to double check, to find out, and to confirm that nothing was done wrong. That's a problem. I had someone who mentioned, I was talking about this earlier in the week, and I had a gentleman tell me, well, the ballots were put under there at about, during the day. Everyone saw that. I don't care how the ballots got underneath the table. I've heard a lot of people say this. Well, the ballots got under the table. Everyone saw them put them under the table. I don't care how they got under the table. What matters is there is no one in the room as they're counting the ballots that were under the table. You're focusing on the wrong thing. It doesn't matter where those ballots were. Yes, they were in sealed containers. Yes, they aren't called suitcases. Doesn't matter. There's no one there as they're counting 18 to 24,000 votes by themselves, apparently running them through the system 3 times. That's your problem. It doesn't matter about where the ballots were stored. It doesn't matter whether they were in a suitcase or a box or a lockbox or anything else. There's no one there. That's the problem. And the media is playing games with people, trying to say, well, you can't say it's irregular. Just because they were put under the table while everyone was watching. Who cares whether they were put there while everyone was watching? Who was there when they were counting? That's the thing that matters. And you see, and again, I want to go back to something else I was talking about earlier, is this is having an impact because All of this is leading up to why we don't have the stimulus that was promised, that was prepared to be given to us in October. We don't see it yet because we're still having this debate, because the Democrats will not pass it through until they get what they want, which is control of the House, control of the Senate, and control of the presidency. They want a supermajority, just like they gave to Obama. Then they can do anything they want, which is change the rules even more, to pack the Supreme Court, to be able to make sure that you are so terrified of COVID that even though health experts are going around the world and they are joining together since October 7th, actually before then, and telling people that, you know what, there are problems here, that this is the worst thing that could be happening, because it is worse for people who have heart disease and cancer, and for children getting vaccinations. But they want you in fear. They don't care that because of the COVID problem, we're seeing that in Japan, more people died from suicide in October than all of the people who died from COVID in 2020. Don't believe me? It's CNN that said it. I didn't say it. CNN did. CNN said this. And think about this. We have more people. We've seen an exponential increase in the number of suicides in the United States. We've seen an exponential increase in the number of domestic abuse cases in the United States. We have increases in drug and alcohol addiction in the United States because of COVID-19. All because somebody wants you to be afraid, and they want to be able to have control. And they don't want to release that control. They want you to be in fear, and you can't take the vaccine even if it's given to you because it came from Orange Man Bad. And you can't get it until it's in Joe Biden's hands or Kamala Harris's hands. And you have to trust us because this is the most secure election ever. And I know Facebook, Twitter, they can't stand me saying this because I'm giving you evidence of it. And the evidence is in your face. Gateway Pundit also points it out as clear as day. Yet another place that you can go and look at it. And these are problems. And I believe they violate Section 5 of the voting laws. I think this is all unconstitutional. We have highly unconstitutional issues that we have to deal with here. I'm really upset that Facebook and Twitter are really messing with the feed, and they're specifically doing so, as I say, keywords like election irregularities, count the vote by hand, that this is a problem and it is factual. They don't like this. They don't want you to hear this. They want you to be just docile. They want you to be sheep and not have a conversation, because they can, if there was evidence, if anyone can give a credible answer, you can call into this show. You can say, Mike, you're wrong. You know what? Here's a perfect reason why it's okay to have 4 people counting 24,000 votes by themselves, and it's perfectly legal. Please explain that to me. Except there isn't an answer on that. Why won't the news media cover it and talk about it and say, yeah, we need to double check this, and we absolutely have to do a hand count because we can't trust what was done? They don't want to say that because it may result in an answer they don't like. And that means that to make sure that you don't do anything, you're going to be pressed in fear. Your business is going to be shut down because of COVID-19. You're going to be locked in your house because of COVID-19. You can't go and see your family. They can't come visit you, just like they did in Thanksgiving, like they're about to do for Christmas and for New Year's. 33 million people in California are not going to be allowed to get out of their homes. You can't even smoke in your own house now. They're making it intolerable so that you can tolerate the election fiasco. That's what I see. That's what I see the evidence. And they're totally distracting you from the fact that think about what's going to happen if Biden gets in. We already know that he plans, as we've seen in Forbes, they were covering this, that he plans to put us back into the Paris Accord. America already is the leading nation in reducing greenhouse gases since 2015. We have reduced greenhouse gases more than all of Europe and England combined. All of Europe and England combined. The next closest nation to reduce greenhouse gases as much as we are is England. I just received a message. Lawrence is saying there's no audio. The audio is coming through clear on my side. There is no interruption in the audio here. And I see it going out in my signal. So the only thing I can imagine, you say you can't hear me. Is there anyone else who can't hear me? You didn't get muted. How am I going to mute you? How would I be able to mute you? By the way, just so you can see, folks, we have comments coming in from Lawrence saying he can't hear me, and he's asking if he got muted. We don't mute anybody. We don't stop anyone from being able to speak on this program. So as far as I can tell, the signal is going out, sound is going out, everything should be able to be heard. If you can't hear it, I think that's your system or that's Facebook, but it's not our system. Now you're good. Yeah, that's Facebook. Sorry, Lawrence. That's Facebook trying to mess with the feed so that you cannot hear anything that's going on to be able to shadow ban. That's a form of shadow ban. It's discouraging you from being able to watch the program. They want us silenced. They don't want you to be involved. Whether you agree or disagree, they don't want you to have the opportunity to hear anything. And that's a problem. So going forward, oh, I love it. And Lawrence is now saying, I was kidding. So are you saying that you were being a troll or that you had a problem? Okay. Michael Bowie says, I can hear you fine. There you go. Well, Mike, you're actually on YouTube, and Lawrence or Larry, he's on, and I know who it is. It's Larry. He's on Facebook, and he has been a troll before, so it may be that he's trying to do that now. Or it's Facebook messing with us. I don't know. But let me get back to what I was saying. We know that there are problems. Why is the media so absolutely interested in trying to distract us from the real issues? We're talking about COVID, and we're mentioning how deadly it is, how it's absolutely going to kill everyone. It is the Black Plague. We have been told that since February. It's not. It is 97%, if not 98 or 99% survivable for the overwhelming amount of the world. We know in Japan there's more people who died from suicide than have died because of COVID. It's more dangerous because of its consequences. We've heard from the European director of the WHO, the World Health Organization, that the isolation and the lockdowns are the very worst thing that you could possibly do to try and resolve COVID. We already know the lockdowns don't work. We went through March until July and saw they don't work. We're seeing it now. They don't work. So why are we doing it? Because it depresses people. It isolates people. It stops people from speaking so they don't get to talk about what's wrong with the election or the fact that you're going to see Joe Biden wants to put America into the Paris Climate Accord, which would devastate our economy. It's going to destroy jobs. It's going to skyrocket, something that President Obama wanted to do. If you remember, going back to 2008, President Obama in 2012 as well said he wanted to skyrocket energy prices to push people into green energy, even though it didn't work. That's President Barack Obama. And America already leads the world in greenhouse gas reduction. We're already doing better than anything the Paris Accord claims other than destroying our economy. We know that Joe Biden wants to get back into the World Health Organization, the very same organization that has now been proven to be working with China to hide how bad COVID was, to make the problem worse. We know this. News media has finally admitted it. It took them 9 months to admit it, but we know that China hid the truth from the world, and the World Health Organization let them do it. Why are we being part of a group that is willing to lie to the face of the world and allow people to die because of a lack of knowledge that they could have prevented? Whether or not it's, and again, I don't think it's as deadly as, it's not the Black Plague, but why would you not tell anyone? Why would you know that China is lying, that there is a problem, and you let it go? That means every death that occurred because of that lack of information is important. It is on their heads, and Joe Biden wants to be part of that. He wants to be hand in hand with these people who lied to America. He wants to open up the ban on Muslim countries, and that means making America more susceptible to, well, the same kinds of suicide bombers that we've seen around the world. Because we know for a fact Iran has said, the leading terrorist country in the world has said that they are putting in infiltrators in with refugees, and they want to destroy America. And they want Joe Biden in so that they can get more money from America, just like they got for the Iran nuclear deal, $150 billion in cash on a runway so that they could promote global terror. Of course they want him back. We also know that he wants to violate the law and reinstitute the Dreamers, or illegal aliens. And he wants to reverse the military ban, making it's hard to explain, but making the military, which is based on everyone is the same and everyone has to be treated the same, to be specialized. Some people are special, and it's going to be more expensive, and it's going to be individualized. It's not an army anymore. That's a problem. Now, Agent Black did mention comment, and Agent Black is one of our viewers from overseas, and we thank you for being here with us over in Britain. And Agent Black says, using sequestered Dominion equipment, Ware County ran an equal number of Trump votes and Biden votes through the tabulator, and the tabulator reported a 26% lead for Biden. And this is coming from Rob Hurst, CPA. You know, I'm not surprised by that. And you know what's funny? And I did this, 2 days ago? I ran a video on this. There's a video that's going around on YouTube right now. On Facebook, which is just a short clip of the 2005 HBO special about the Hursty hack, Hursti hack. You can also look at my previous video where I go into it in detail and list all of the links with it, where this one gentleman set up the tabulators. He hacked the system so that even though they had they did a test run of it, they knew what the vote count was. It came out 100% opposite of what they put in, and that was in the memory of the system so that no one could tell unless you actually looked at the ballots themselves. So I'm not surprised that he found that. And again, this is why we have to do a hand count, and we have to audit all of the Dominion voting software systems. We need to check every single one of those machines. Was this something that happened everywhere? How many times did President Trump or the Republican Party lose a vote and was given to the Democratic Party? Because that's the only way that we've seen this system work everywhere in the nation. And it's being done so that the Democratic Party can go out there and that they can They can do this. And by the way, all of these things are what Joe Biden wants to do by executive order. He wants to bypass Congress. He wants to create law without having to go through Congress, which they didn't win. Which is, he wants to go back into the Paris Climate Accord and destroy our economy, our energy production, and every business that's going to survive. Hopefully, the ones that remain are going to be in trouble of going out of business because the cost of electricity is going to be too high. We're going to see them join the World Health Organization, an organization that lied to the American people and therefore killed people because they forgot to tell us that there was a problem and how bad that problem may be and what that problem was about. We may have, and it may be one person, it could be 10,000 people, I don't know. But he wants to open our borders and allow individuals that are questionable, that we have been told will be infiltrating our nation to kill our innocent civilians. They want to kill our mothers, our children, our kids. They want to come out and kill us. The Ayatollah of Iran has been very explicit about this forever. He's not hiding it. The Iranian government is not hiding that they support terrorism and want to kill everyone in America and in Israel. And Joe Biden wants to open up our borders for these individuals and to allow them to come into America without proper review and without any kind of background checks. And that is not something we've made up. He has consistently said this under the Obama administration and now again. These are problems, people, that we are not hearing about, that no one wants to talk about. We're not even beginning to consider some of the problems. And we know that this is, we've heard now from John Kerry, the former Secretary of State under President Obama, who worked directly with Joe Biden on the Iranian nuclear deal, as reported by The Hill, talking about Joe Biden wants to reset the global economy. He wants to change the way we live. He wants to impoverish America. That's what the global reset does. That's what the Great Reset is. It destroys your quality of life. It will raise the quality of life for someone in Africa who's dirt poor and lives in a hovel, but it will take yours down. It will destroy America as an economic leader in the world. This is the Great Reset, and this is the introduction of socialism. Yes, it is. And we know John Kerry is saying that this is something that Joe Biden wants to do. We know Kamala Harris wants to do this. This is part of what BLM, Black Lives Matter, has been asking for. This is part of what Antifa is asking for. This is why Black Lives Matter was created, because it is a socialist political organization. This is what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is about. And these are the things that they don't want you to focus on. It's the reason why this channel is being shadow banned. It's one of the reasons why I hope you, if you listen to this, look at the sources and share this with other people. Let them know, because Facebook, YouTube, Twitter absolutely will not. They don't want you to hear a word of what we're saying. And you know what? If you think I'm wrong, I'm happy to hear that, but they don't want you to have the discussion. And that is the problem. Even if you think I'm 1,000% wrong, you should be able to hear it and say, I think you're wrong. Here's my proof. Here's my counter argument. They don't want you to even have the thought. They don't want you to even hear the conversation. This is why they've made a list of Trump supporters and individuals who voted for Trump and individuals who have the wrong kind of thinking. It's straight out of 1984. You have wrongthink. We have to correct you. We have to punish you. We're putting you on a list so we can round you up later and take care of you. You know, there's a certain part of America, a certain time in the world, where a group of people were being isolated, rounded up so they could be re-educated. Actually, it's happened a couple times in Germany, in Russia, in China. And we've seen some of the largest numbers of deaths in the world. Near genocides have happened because of that same mentality. You have the wrong think. Let's go and grab you guys up, and we're going to take you somewhere so we can teach you how to think right. And we've never seen those people again. Tens of millions, actually hundreds of millions of people. These are historical facts. It's not a question. The purges that happened in China and Russia and Germany, they're not questioned. They are absolute fact. And that starts with, oh, you can't hear that conversation. It doesn't matter if he's right or wrong. It doesn't matter if there's evidence. It doesn't matter if the news media has already reported on this. You can't talk about that. It doesn't matter if there's video evidence. You can't see that. It doesn't matter if it's currently in the courts and there are debates and we're actually hearing from the people involved in it, like Claudia Tenney. It's a matter of you can't have that conversation. You don't have the freedom. Even in America, the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, you don't have that because you might think the wrong thing for their political agenda. And that is a problem. You know, I'll give you a great example of how crazy it is about the news media and how blatantly they are lying to the public. And again, you can vote for Joe Biden. You can vote for anyone you want. I don't care. It's not about that. I want you to understand that they are lying to you. So this is from the New York Post, and I pulled this very specifically. Joe Biden suggests he wants to return to the Bush-era tax rates. I want you to think about that for a second before I say anything else. And this is the proof that the media and the Democratic Party, the political left, the progressive party, they want you to not think. They don't want you to understand what is going on. And I want you to, and this is from December 2nd. Joe Biden suggests he wants to return to the Bush-era tax rates. Who was president after President Bush? Wasn't it Barack Obama? Who's vice president? Wasn't that Joe Biden? What happened to taxes under them? Well, it's not even a question. You don't even have to guess about it because, in fact, in the article, they highlight it themselves. I believe it is, and here it is. The nation's highest marginal tax income rates were 39.6% for Americans earning at least $374,000 when Bush made a series of sweeping cuts in 2001 and 2003, known as the Bush tax cuts, reducing the marginal tax rate to 35%. He knocked it down 4%. These cuts remained in place until 2013, when President Barack Obama and Congress allowed the Bush tax cuts to expire as the economy regained steam in the wake of the banking-fueled financial crisis. Okay, so stop right there. Look back at the top. Joe Biden wants to return to the Bush-era tax rate. No, he wants to return to the Obama-era tax rate. Because under President Obama in 2013, the tax rates went up. They went to 39.6%. It was the Obama-era tax rate. But see, if he blames it on Bush, it sounds like it's a Republican problem, not a Democratic problem. It sounds like, well, President Bush was taking more away from the public, and it's okay. That we're only going back to what the Republicans did. The Republicans lowered the rate. The Republicans wanted a lower tax rate. The Democrats wanted it to be higher. They wanted less Americans to have money in their pocket. They wanted more money in the government's hands so the government could spend it for you. It was Obama's redistribution of wealth. Biden wants to have that same thing. But you're being lied to. You are being lied to. And I understand the New York Post is actually one of the better publications for trying to make people aware of things. But the title tells you right there, Joe Biden suggests he wants to return to Bush-era tax rates. No, he doesn't. He wants to go back to the Barack Obama tax rates. The media doesn't want you to think. They don't want you to think about any of it. Which is why YouTube, Facebook right now are fighting me. Because they don't want you to think about this. Because it's pretty straightforward. President Trump reformed taxes again in 2017, lowering the federal top margin tax rate from 39.6% to 37%. He didn't even lower it as much as Bush did. But he lowered the tax rates. And Obama, the Democrats, raised the taxes, but they also increased spending. President Obama doubled the national debt, and he didn't have COVID behind him. But you're not supposed to think about that. You're supposed to think, well, and I'm not blaming, this is what Biden wants you to think. This is what the progressives want you to think. Well, this is something that came from Bush. It has nothing to do with President Obama. It's not like the economy was ruined under President Barack Obama and Joe Biden because they increased tax rates at a time that we had a crisis, a financial crisis in this nation that we had not recovered from. You're not supposed to think about that. What you're supposed to think about is, oh, well, COVID is bad. Where is it? Worry about COVID. COVID's the problem. You have to be worried about COVID. Don't think about how many people have died, committed suicide because of it. Don't think about the businesses that have closed because we're locking down everything. Don't worry about the fact that we're seeing thousands, over 6,000 experts say that this is the worst thing you could possibly do, including individuals from the WHO and their European department. No. Don't worry about any of that. That's all okay. Just remember, Joe Biden, he wants to just go back to where Bush was. It's all right. It's what the Republicans did. No, it's what the Democrats did. It's what the progressives did. And it destroyed our economy. They want us to forget about the fact that when you defund the police, something that Barack Obama has said recently, who said change the name, because if people think of it as a different name, kind of like saying that it's Bush-era tax rates. If you just change the name, people will agree with us and they will do it. Even though if you actually pay attention, what happened? Carjackings up 537%. Violent crimes exploding. For months on end. This is moves. We've been seeing this pattern for months. In fact, we can go back and look. There has not been one city in the United States where they have defunded the police to any extent, which is in every single city that this has been done. When they defund the police, they disband the police. They get rid of the police. And the very next thing that happens is crime goes up. Violent crime goes up. Carjackings, in this case, up 537%. In New York City, violent shootings have gone up 126%. That was the last count that we had. I can go through city after city after city. There is not one that does not follow this same exact pattern. But you shouldn't think about that. That's why they're not talking about it. They stopped talking about BLM and socialism the second that they said, well, Biden as president-elect. Stop thinking about it. It's all okay. And this is why they don't want to do a count. Because you would see, maybe Biden won legitimately. Maybe he did get all the votes, the majority of them. But they cheated along the way. I know that, and I would say that because I'm watching people who are going by themselves and counting votes for 2 hours at a time, putting in some of those votes 3 times each stack. Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, yes, there was fraud, rampant, blatant fraud. When we have cases where we are watching votes that are just being found out of the blue, and we're being told this by the New York Times, so it's not me saying this. If the New York Times is questioning this and saying this seems irregular, why are any number of ballots being found a month after the election and being questioned about whether they can be counted or not? Why are 20% of illegal aliens trying to vote in person, or illegal individuals, unregistered voters? They don't want you to talk about that. They don't want you to think that, hey, they're trying to ban smoking in your own home, unless it's an illegal drug, a drug that takes away your ability to think straight. Because if you're not thinking straight, then you're not questioning that Joe Biden is lying. You're not questioning about where the ballots came from. You're not thinking about the fact that thousands of scientists are telling you that you should never lock down any society because it's more dangerous and it's going to lead to more people dying than the actual problem itself. They don't want you to think about the fact that when we try with that defunding the police, all you need to do is bring social workers and it will be okay. Less people will get hurt. That's going to stop all the shootings, except the Seattle. They don't want to tell you about the social workers that got stabbed to death, how this has not been working. That social workers don't want to be on the front lines trying to de-escalate individuals who are trying to kill everyone there. I don't know. We even have, and the LA mayor, you can't even walk. This is something we've heard about in LA, in Australia as well. And I wish someone from Australia would call in. You can't go out and walk your dog. That's not allowed because of COVID. Because you might run into someone and you might have a conversation and say, wait a minute, Joe Biden, it's not the Bush era tax rates, it's the Obama era tax rates. This is Obama's problem. This is a Democratic problem. This is a progressive problem. Hang on. You know what? Ballots being found a month after the fact, that's a problem. A judge should never be counting that. Why are we having this conversation? Why is Nancy Pelosi planning on trying to put in a Democrat even though she knows the Democrat lost? You shouldn't be talking about those things. They don't want to risk having you walk around and find out that more people died from suicide than from COVID in 1 month. There's a bunch of other stuff I wanted to get to today, and I didn't. And I'm frustrated because right now on Facebook, on Twitter, we're watching as they're blocking this. They're denying you the ability to hear this, to see this. You know what? And you don't have to agree with me. I'm not once said you have to believe me. You have to think that this is absolutely true. Yes, I'm showing you evidence. Yes, I have even many, many more articles that I wanted to get through today. And I'm going to talk about a couple more of them anyway. But here's the problem. They don't want you to be able to have that conversation. They don't want you to think. They want you to just do what you're told. That's why you can't be black. You know, and I didn't have this up as a link, but you've probably heard about this. I don't think I need to link to it. Remember Black Panther? Remember T'Challa's sister? That actress, her name is Letitia Wright. And when the actor Chadwick Boseman, when he died, we heard a huge number of people come out and say, you know what, Letitia Wright, she should be the next Black Panther. When they film Black Panther 2, it should be the woman who played T'Challa's sister, the scientist girl, because girl power, and she's black, and it's a black film. Yay, put her out there. That's right, she's black. We're going to do it because black power, because of female power, feminism. Yay. And they were all behind her and supporting her. Up until about a day or two ago, when she said, hey, maybe there's a problem with COVID. Maybe there's a problem with doing lockdowns. Maybe. Is a lockdown the best thing? She asked a question. She asked people to think about the vaccines. Is an untested, rushed vaccine the best thing for you? Or is a natural immunity the best thing for you? For asking the question, she has now been labeled a racist. They are trying to get her banned from Hollywood. They're trying to get her removed from the Marvel movie industry and taken out of the Black Panther films. This is the same person that just a month ago they were championing and screaming at the top of their lungs had to be the next Black Panther because she was black and a woman. Those were the only requirements that were necessary. Well, there was a third one that was necessary. She didn't think. As long as she didn't think, and she's black and a woman, well, they absolutely wanted her in. The moment she opened up her mouth and asked a question, like the questions I'm bringing up to you right now, the scenarios that I'm asking you to think about, when she did that, what has been the response that we have seen on social media, that we're seeing that's affecting her life and her career? She is being attacked nonstop, being told she is a racist, a bigot, that she is trying to kill people, that she has no sensitivity, that she has a moral low ground, that she is an evil individual. Yes, these tweets exist. Look them up. They are attacking Letitia Wright because she asked a question. And the moment you ask a question, you no longer get to benefit from being black or a woman or gay or transgender. You can't be any of those things. You think I'm kidding? Think about Jenner. Katie Jenner, formerly Bruce Jenner. She was a darling of the progressive movement, a trans hero, until the moment she got on ABC News and had an interview and mentioned, oh, and I'm a Republican. Instantly, you stopped hearing about her. She won the Woman of the Year award. Trans rights. Yay. The moment that she said she's a Republican, you've never heard another word about her. The progressives forgot that she exists. Trans rights? What rights? You're a Republican. You have no rights. You ask a question. You have no rights. This is the terrifying thing that's going on right now. It's about more than the elections. Yes, we all have election fatigue, and we should. It's tiring. It's annoying. It's infuriating because we have to say the same things over and over and over again, and we're fighting against the major news media. I don't have the money the news media has. I never will. I'm not that rich. I'm not that popular, although I can be. I do want to get to 500 subscribers by the end of the year. Please subscribe if you haven't. But that's okay. But the fact is they are terrified of this one black man asking a question and asking you to think and to look at the evidence that they have provided that they want you to never, ever question, to never, ever think about. That's terrifying. And you can think I'm wrong, and you can tell me, Mike, I'm wrong. Yeah, you don't agree with me. Okay. But stop for a second. You don't have to agree with me. Why won't they let you have the conversation? Why won't they let you say, I don't agree with you? Why do they want to prevent you from being able to have that conversation? I have done over 1,000 videos over 10 years Over 1,000 videos over 10 years. I have done hundreds of live video on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Hundreds. And it's only when I have conversations where I'm bringing up something that is not popular amongst the progressive crowd that suddenly the systems I use have a problem. That should make you wonder. It's not that I don't know what I'm doing. It's not that my equipment can't do this. It's not that there's a bad connection. It's they don't want you to hear this. This is purposeful. If you don't think I'm 100% right, that's perfect. You shouldn't. You're a human being. I get things wrong. You get things wrong. We all get things wrong. It happens. But why won't they let you have the conversation? Why won't they let you ask a question about the 55 votes? Why won't they let you ask a question about why the dead literally voted in New York State? Why won't they say, let's do an audit of all of the Dominion voting software systems? Why are they not saying, why will they not publish how many people in America have died from suicide from the beginning of the year till now, which I cannot find anywhere. And I am doing FOIAs to try and get that answer because it's not being published. Why won't they let you see that? Why won't they let you see how much has been the increase in domestic abuse? I can tell you that in New York State, as of March, there was an increase of over 30% in domestic abuse cases. But they won't show it. They won't tell you. You're not supposed to ask that question. You're not supposed to look for that information. You're not supposed to say, gee, if we defund the police, what happens next? Oh, there's a 537% increase in carjackings. There's over a 100% increase in the number of people who are shot and killed in city after city after city across the nation, regardless of which coast you are in or whether you're in the center of the nation. And they want to shut down everybody's voice who is having that conversation. And they want to ban them and they want to put them on lists so that they can re-educate them. At the same time that they have economic policies that have been proven to fail and have done more damage than anything else. I'm asking questions. I am providing evidence and asking you to question what is going on because there is a consequence. That's what long form commentary is about. Here is the evidence. Ask the question. You don't have to agree with my conclusion, but you should be able to think about it. And you shouldn't be stopped from being able to have it. You know what? If Democrats want to tell me, progressives want to tell me, the Democratic Socialists of America want to tell me that they think I am completely wrong and this is the most legitimate election they have ever seen, then why won't you count? Why aren't you saying, let's do the count? If Biden is so confident, if Democrats are so confident, if Pelosi is so confident that they have won, wouldn't you want to count? Because it would silence every question I have about this election. If we do the count and every one of the numbers, you do a hand count and you do an audit of the voting system and you tell me that the votes come back 100% the same, okay, I have no more complaint. You proved your point. You proved the case. There is evidence there. Why would I question it? You would have no opposition anymore. No one would doubt you. Everyone would trust and be more willing to listen to you. That's not what they're doing. They're rushing through. They're trying to convince you that Biden has already become president-elect, that Anthony Brindisi is going to be congressman, regardless of the fact that they have lost the votes. They lost the votes in Iowa. And irregardless of that, they are saying, no, but we still won. We lost the vote. We still won. The economy is getting destroyed, but it's still okay. You don't have a job anymore, but don't worry about that because we're the government. We're going to take care of you for the problem that we caused to affect you. Is that really what America's supposed to be about? Because I remember growing up and it wasn't like that. You know, if I was famous, they wouldn't even try and block this. But I'm not. I'm not rich. I'm not famous. I'm just someone like you. And I'm having the same problems you have. I mean, we're talking about questions. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're talking about questions. Let me ask you a question. I saw this before I came onto the show. Kevin Sorbo. So 19-year-olds shouldn't have to pay student debt because, student debt, fastest growing debt in the world, in the nation. $1.5 trillion or $1.7 trillion at this point. So it's a horrible burden for the students. By the way, only 11% of the population actually go to college and get a degree. And by the way, waiving the student debt is actually a benefit to rich white Americans. People who have degrees, they make more money. You're actually helping them more than anyone else. And there's been a report that came out of the University of Chicago proving this on November 30th. Did a video about it last week. You can look it up. What's going on? So the progressives, the Democratic Socialists of America, are telling you that 19-year-olds shouldn't have to pay the student debt because they can't understand the student loans that they are signing for. But 4-year-olds can change their gender when they feel like it. There's the logic. You're not supposed to ask the question. If you're not smart enough at 19 to sign a financial document after going through the entire education system, how can you expect a child to be able to make educated decisions about their future, about their bodies that they don't even understand, that haven't even finished developing yet? And you'll say, well, it's not really 4-year-olds. It's kids that are 7 and 8 and 9. Some of them are preteens. They're still younger than 19. They're not even legal adults, which goes back to the same question I'm asking. But you're not supposed to ask that question. Why not? Why can't we ask these questions? Why can't we say, gee, Nancy, you and Chuck Schumer were ready to give a stimulus deal in October, but you didn't want Orange Man Bad's name on it. So you said you'd wait until after the election when Biden won. Now you're claiming Biden won. Put out that stimulus. Why are you still waiting? What's the problem? You're saying that this was the most secure election that has ever existed in America. And then you don't want me to look at a video and say, it can't be very secure if 4 people could run through 24,000 votes. That's not secure. You can't tell me I can't ask questions. And you can't think about the consequences of those questions. It's aggravating. Now I've got 8 minutes. I've got a computer system that's pumping out signal at 2 to 3 to 4 times as strong as I need to reach everyone out there. And I've got YouTube and Facebook and Twitter fighting against me every step of the way. Here's another question. Why are they afraid of this old black man? I'm not rich. I'm not powerful. I'm not politically connected in any significant manner. I know a lot of politicians. Half of them hate my guts. Whether they're Republicans or Democrats, it doesn't really make a difference. A lot of them are upset with me because I don't hold back. Why are they afraid of my voice? Why are they afraid of my questions? This was not the best show I've ever had. I'm not winning a Pulitzer for this one. Why are they afraid? Why are they afraid to let you hear this? They let you listen to the other 200 some odd live streams that I did without any problem. But now, ooh, it's a problem. I'm on one of those Trump lists. I'm one of those agitators. I'm one of those people who don't believe in the Democratic Socialists of America because I've actually seen socialism, because I actually know what happened, because I'm asking questions. And I'm backing up my questions with actual proof, saying, here's the basis by which I ask this. And I ask you to think. Not to agree, not to blindly say I'm right, but to say, that makes sense because it's logical. And they don't want you to hear that. Whether you're in Britain or Germany or Peru or America or Canada, they don't want you to hear it. But they don't want to stop me. They don't want to outright ban me because then they'd get caught. They'd get sued. They'd lose. So instead, they just want you to not be able to find it. They don't want you to see it. They don't want you to hear it. And you should be terrified of that. We know that Joe Biden, we know that Senator Leahy, Senator Blumenthal have come out and they said they want to increase the amount of censorship on the internet. They've said that. I've already shown you evidence of that 2 weeks ago. They've come out and they've said they want people to be locked in their homes, kind of like what we saw with County Executive Jason Garnar, who said that people had to be locked in their homes every other day, that you were prisoners in your own home under solitary confinement. We've seen them say that you can't have your family over, you can't visit your friends, you can't talk to anyone during Thanksgiving, and they're going to say it again for Christmas, and they're going to say it again for New Year's Eve. That you don't have that right anymore, the right to assemble, peaceably assemble. You can't do that unless you're going to a protest, and that protest is approved. And by the way, BLM no longer approved. Gee, what's going on here, folks? It's not a conspiracy. These are facts. This is evidence. And these are questions. And they deserve to be answered. And you deserve to be able to hear those answers. I don't know. It's been a long day. And it's tiring. And I spend a lot of time preparing 20, 30 articles that I'm reading, videos that I'm editing, double checking, confirming, getting guests on. All for, the internet overlords to go out there and say, well, we're going to hide him. Because they're afraid. They're afraid of you thinking. They're afraid of you actually considering the facts. And God forbid, like Letitia Wright from Black Panther, God forbid you come up and you go, hey, that doesn't make sense. Maybe it's not right. They don't want you to ever have that conversation. They don't want you to ever have that thought in your mind, because then you may not do what they say to do. You may realize that the government never comes to help. The government is never the answer to anything. The government's the problem, especially when that government is being guided by individuals whose main purpose is to give themselves more power, to give their friends more power. And they are more than willing to lie and to deceive you and confuse you. Blame things on the Bush tax cuts that were their tax increases. To say that they want to, take away your money, take away your livelihood, take away your freedom. Matter of fact, I didn't get into it today, But then there's this woman, Orit Dolev, or Shankara, and her TED Talk, talking about socialism. And that, you know what? You don't need to have anything. You have nothing. You deserve nothing. You get to own nothing. You don't get to own a home. You don't get to own a car. You don't get to own the clothes on the back of the shirt on your back. You get nothing. You own nothing. Because then you are nothing. You have no possessions because you have no identity. They don't want you to think about those conclusions. That answer to why are they doing this? What's the point? Because if you don't have an identity, you're just someone who's going to be a mindless minion and do what you're told. And they get to be the ones who tell you. I don't know. Maybe that's just the way I see it. But I know that there are answers to this. In fact, we're